Hi, Recovery Girls. I'm Lynn. I am sitting in my car again, waiting for one of my children to finish soccer, and I thought I would use this time to check in a little bit. I had a moment of clarity yesterday, and oftentimes we'll say that we'll use that term in recovery to refer to our bottom when we had our moment of clarity and we knew we needed to get help. But we can also have moments of clarity every single day, multiple times a day, when we're talking about things like just an epiphany or something becomes really clear to us. And yesterday I was reflecting on an argument I had with my boyfriend, and it hit me that so much of my arguments I have with people or my feelings of insecurity come from fear. And that sounds like, duh, of course it does. But it just hit me in a way yesterday that it became so clear that when I am feeling anxious or I am feeling insecure, the root is fear. And I used to go to the bottle and numb it, or I would go to maybe unhealthy relationships. And so I thought about this whole fear thing and how I can handle it now. And it came to me another phrase of recovery, which is we practice these principles in all of our affairs. And so I thought I'd talk a little bit about those principles and what we're talking about. When we look at the steps of recovery, we can take each one really and probably find one or two principles that come out of each of the steps. I think about the first step, and I think about how we had to be honest. We had to realize that we had a problem. We had to realize that our lives had become unmanageable. So there's honesty. There's courage. I wrote some down so I wouldn't forget, hope. And I think about this whole thing of fear, that if we can practice the principle of hope, how life-giving that is to be able to move out of fear and into hope. When we talk about the third step, it's obviously faith. I turned my life and my will over to the care of God as I understood Him. And so I realized that when I come to my boyfriend to argue with him over an insecurity I have, that I am not practicing the principle of faith. But if I would, and thankfully I eventually did move into that, praying about it, praying that even though he didn't react the way I wanted him to, I'm still okay. And I still have a purpose, and I don't just throw in the towel and say, well, forget this relationship, it's too hard. I'm going to trust God to bring us out of that and not live in that fear. Another principle is courage. Another one is integrity. Am I being true to myself, or am I living in a right way? And so much of what we do in arguments, or I should just claim it myself, is becoming more concerned about how I'm viewed or how I am not being heard, instead of really listening to what somebody else is trying to say. And in this particular argument, I had come to my boyfriend about something which ultimately hooked his woundedness and his insecurity. And so we just went around and around instead of staying true and owning our own stuff and living in integrity in there and that. And then willingness is another one, just being willing to continue to work on ourselves and to not get into the addictive behaviors that we've gotten into, not get into the emotional insobriety. Is that the right word? I'm not going to stop this and try and figure it out, but you know what I mean. And then, willingness and humility. Humility is a big one, and I have a hard time being wrong or being perceived as wrong. So humility is something that I have to practice. So those are some principles that we can practice and just keep in mind. There are more, I'm sure, but I just wanted to touch on those and touch on how practicing those principles in all of our affairs can help lead us out of fear and into a really healthy place instead of an unsettled emotional place. So with that, I hope you turn your life and your will over to the care of God and then watch for the miracles.